Hi everyone, apologies for the delay. I'm going to use the most overused sentence of 2020, just had a few technical issues. Hopefully you've been able to keep yourselves entertained while you wait, and we will get into the session now. So the first thing I'd like to do is to welcome everyone. We're very pleased by the strong interest in this proposal. You can't see each other, but there are over 50 people attending this session. And before we formally begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and to the Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Alessandra Guadagnolo. I'm the Director of the Service Delivery and Place Reform team at the Department of Justice and Community Safety. I'm introducing the session and I'll answer some of your questions at the end. Before we get into the detail, I'm going to go through just some housekeeping for how today's session will run. We have an hour and a half. The format is a slide presentation, which will be an overview of the project and procurement process. We've then allocated a fairly substantive amount of time for Q&A. Given the number of people that are joining us, we're not sure that we will get through everybody's Q&A, and we'll run through the follow-up process at the end of the session. This is obviously running in an event format. We'll place a recording of the session on the Buying for Victoria website for anyone who was not able to join us. Additionally, a summary of all the general questions and answers will be provided. To ask your questions, please use the question and answer function. Also use this function to communicate with us, and you can let us know if you're having any technical difficulties. We will do our best to resolve them. We are hoping to have Auslan interpreters joining us. We're having some difficulty getting them in at the moment. Once they join us, my colleague Julia and I will be off screen. The Auslan interpreters will be changing over approximately every 15 minutes. If you would like to use the captioning, you're able to turn it on via the settings symbol in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Something else to be aware of, I think we're all getting pretty used to running sessions like this, but there is a small delay for viewers. So if you think we're taking a long time to respond to you or get to your question, it is probably because of that delay, and we have a few people working in the background, but your patience is appreciated. So we'll jump into the content because that's what you're all here for. This proposal is about improving access to the NDIS for people with a disability in the justice system. I don't need to tell any of you who've joined us today, but the NDIS is a transformational reform, but it will take a long time to be embedded and part of our BAU. The Victorian government, I think you will all know, has worked actively to support the NDIS and to get the best outcomes from that scheme that it can. We see it as a transformational opportunity for everybody, including people in contact with the justice system. This project is supported through the Keeping Our Sector Strong, Victoria's Workforce Plan for the NDIS. I know that most of you will be familiar with that plan, so I won't go through it in detail, but its key focus, acknowledging the transformation, was to build workforce capability and support innovation. Because again, as all of you will know, that without the people who use the system and need the system and the workforce that support those people, the transformation isn't possible. Our key focus in this project, as I said, is improving access. We see as fundamental to achieving that is improving our co-design and co-production with clients and workforce on initiatives to support capability uplift on the NDIS. That focus and principle will drive our selection, and it's important to us to have providers that will have a genuine partnership with people with a disability who have lived experience of the justice system. Of course, there are a lot of technical details that we need to get through, and we want to give you as much information as we can. I'm going to hand over now to my colleague, Julia Douglas, who's the manager of this project, and she'll take you through more detail in the slides. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Alessandra. Welcome again to the briefing session, and as Alessandra said, there's quite a lot of people in today, so we'll just get through what we can and recap at the end. So this session is about building justice workforce capability around the NDIS through lived experience. So I'll move on to the session structure. Today we'll cover 4 topics: review of the key words in the project, an overview of the project, the procurement process, and lastly the Q&A section. As we mentioned earlier, there is a function in Teams, a Q&A function in Teams, and we've included a screenshot here to help you if you aren't familiar with that. While I go through the presentation, feel free to add questions at any time into the live Q&A chat. At the end of the session, we'll go through as many of these as we can, and you can also add questions after the session via email or phone. The details will be provided at the end of the session. So moving on to the key words. So before we get into details, we can acknowledge there's a bit of jargon in these processes, and we want to be clear about what we mean when we use different terms in the presentation. So here's just a brief explanation of some of those key terms. So an offerer is the organisation applying for the funding. A supplier is the organisation who's successful in receiving the funding. Request for proposal is the process to apply. A consortium is a group of organisations that might apply together. The lead agency refers to a consortium arrangement, and that's the organisation that has the most responsibility for the project. The proposal is the idea for the project that the offerer puts forward to us. Co-production and or to co-produce that's talking about organisations partnering with people with disability to do the work together. And commercial in confidence is strictly confidential information that won't be shared with the public. I might also add the term lived experience that will be used in the presentation. By this, I'm being inclusive and talking about people with disability who've been in contact with various parts of the justice system. That might be police, the courts, corrections, in prison, either as offenders, suspected offenders, victims of crime, or both. And we also take an inclusive view of that term to include families and carers of people with disability who have also had experience of the justice system. So moving on to the next section, the overview, I'll cover the project background and what we want to achieve, what we want you to do, the timelines and governance, and then the performance measures and what we're looking for. The project background is covered in this 4 key points. In essence, so the project is about, as Alessandra mentioned, the Keeping Our Sector Strong strategy. The introduction is clear of the NDIS is clearly an opportunity to better support people with disability in the justice system. And we want to do this by creating opportunities for lived experience, participation and co-production to better meet the needs of people with disability and other people with complex needs in the system. So we know that it's difficult for people with disability who come into contact with the justice system to access the NDIS. And to do that better, we need to work with people with lived experience as experts in what it's like to have a disability and be involved in the justice system and receive supports. We know that many of you are already doing this, or at least want to be doing it more. So that's the key parts of the background. So moving on to what we want to achieve. We know it's an ambitious aim, but we think it's important and achievable. So we want to see a justice workforce that's better able and is more confident to identify and respond to disability needs. We want to see an uplift in the knowledge about the NDIS and related supports so that justice workers can engage more effectively with the NDIS. We want to see opportunities for people with disability in the justice system to participate and co-produce workforce development initiatives so that people with disability can feel safe to disclose their disability status and feel that staff are going to be better able to meet their needs. And we also want a justice workforce that better understands the value of sharing lived experience and how that can improve justice services. Okay, the next slide covers what we want you to do. So this is what we want, this is a summary of what we want you to achieve and the goals of the Just Voices procurement project. So we want you to engage as much as and participate as much as possible with people with lived experience from diverse backgrounds to represent the needs of different groups. And we want you to demonstrate how you'll do that and then provide an interim report about that engagement. Building evidence and being able to share knowledge is an important part of this project, so that's one of the key aims of it. We're looking for co-production, which I flagged at the beginning. This is about forming genuine partnerships with people with disability to do the work together. And this might include a range of activities such as people with lived experience, workshopping solutions, producing videos, delivering training, making governance decisions, providing advice, or being involved in evaluating outcomes. We also want you to undertake continuous improvements and demonstrate outcomes. So as you can see there, that the three kind of key parts of it are about the engagement, the working together and producing workforce development initiatives, and also being able to demonstrate outcomes, because essentially we want to see that it's effective and working. Okay, I'll move on to the timelines and governance. So as you can see, the timelines are outlined there, that the project runs over approximately 11 months from January next year to November. The milestones that we expect for the project, I'll talk about milestones for the procurement process shortly. In terms of governance, we're looking for clear roles and structures. In addition to working with people with lived experience, we expect consultation with frontline staff, obviously as the recipients of the support to uplift their capabilities, as it's clearly about the frontline staff where the change is going to happen. So in a governance structure, the Service Delivery and Place Reform team at Department of Justice and Community Safety will manage the project. The Justice Portfolio NDIS Governance Group will provide clear governance oversight. Engagement with clients and frontline staff in the department will be facilitated through the project manager, and the supplier will need to ensure adequate project management structures are in place to support high quality project outputs and be able to effectively liaise with different parts of the department around the workforce uplift parts of the project. Okay, so moving on to performance measures. And I think it's important to look at these. You need to make sure you're across these so you can be clear in articulating how you'll meet them in your response. So we're looking for demonstrated improvement in the justice workforce attitudes and capabilities, and have the workforce have opportunities to participate with lived experience. We're also looking for demonstrated improvement in the workforce's understanding and confidence to navigate the NDIS and associated services. This is new terrain and I suppose evolving terrain, so we really looking for some improvement in that. We're looking for reported improvement from people with disability themselves in the system, that their needs are being better met. We're looking for a high level of co-production to address the project requirements, and that the workforce development tools, trainings and resources are fit for purpose evidence-informed, and translate contemporary research and other knowledge into practice, including the findings of the Royal Commission. There's obviously evolving evidence in this space, and I think increasing understanding of the value of lived experience and what that can bring into service delivery. So we want to see that represented. And we want alignment of purpose of the project through regular, timely progress reporting with the project manager. So maintaining some good communication throughout. Okay. So what we're looking for. So the Venn diagram clearly shows we're looking for two key things, which, you know, it's not an either or approach. It's definitely, we're looking for both of these things. So we are looking for offers that demonstrate expertise and participation in co-production and with the skills in workforce development. In addition, we're looking, you know, we're looking for that lived experience, participation and workforce development. In addition, we're looking for demonstrated expertise in disability in the justice system in particular, because we know that there's different things about the justice system and we want to explore that and get a better understanding of that. So I'll go into a little bit more detail next about what we're looking for in terms of consortium proposals. Okay, the next section covers the procurement process. So we'll move on to that. We'll go over key information for your proposals and other information about consortium proposals and the evaluation criteria. Okay, as I spoke earlier in the project, you know, in the project milestones and timelines, but it's also about detail about timelines for the procurement process itself before the project commencement. So this is really essential. You're only required to complete Part D of the request for proposal. Please note that the technical criteria have word limits and attachments will not be considered in the evaluation process. The request for proposal closes on the 17th of December at 2 p.m. and proposals must be submitted online via the Buying for Victoria website. All general inquiries, including questions from today's sessions, will be published as FAQs on the Buying for Victoria website, and further requests for proposal clarifications following the sessions can be sent to Alessandra via the Service Delivery Reform inbox. So what happens after the closure of proposal is there'll be an evaluation period, and then ideally we're looking to award a supply in late January. Okay. We'll move on to the consortium proposal. So as I flagged earlier, we're looking for a broad skill set, lived experience participation, workforce development, as well as disability justice experience. Acknowledging this, we're encouraging consortium proposals. We want to see the capability built in the sector and greater collaboration. So if you are submitting a consortium proposal, in Part D, the lead organisation must complete the offer details section, meet the mandatory conformance criteria and meet the commercial criteria. All other organisations involved in the offer must complete a partner organisation and form in Appendix 2. Responses to the technical criteria and project costing must be on behalf of all parties. So that's something that you do together. We want to see that as a collaborative effort. The contract, although, will be signed by the lead organisation and any payments will be made to the lead organisation. So we don't have capacity to engage with multiple organisations. Okay, let's just moving on to the evaluation criteria. As you can see, this is lifted from the documentation, but I just want to briefly highlight the key technical evaluation criteria that you can see showing the weighting there. The project requirements cover, you know, understanding and ability to engage effectively with lived experience voices. This could be transferable experience from other sectors such as AOD or mental health. We'd like to see a sustainable and effective workforce interventions, collaboration with the Department of Justice and Community Safety, and interventions that are applicable in youth and adult settings. In regard to and that's obviously got a 30% weighting on it, so it's a significant part of the process. Governance and project management arrangements are weighted at 20%, and they're about ensuring that you have structures in place to deliver this type of project and are able to work with justice workforce areas. Past performance and current work is based on how you can demonstrate your track record in similar kinds of projects, and providing some references to support that. Lived experience methodology and workforce development are equally weighted, and the lived experience methodology is obviously a key component, and as I would reiterate, that we're aiming for the highest level of participation possible. The workforce development, again, we're clearly looking for effective workforce interventions that lead to improvement in outcomes for justice clients and the workforce, and that can be scaled and applied broadly and have utility across the sector. And the last two components are collaboration and innovation. So clearly we're encouraging partnerships and looking to test new ideas and innovation. So that gives you, okay. So this brings us to the last section of the presentation. So the Q&A session. As I flagged at the beginning, we have a Q&A function which people have been adding to while I've been presenting, and please feel free to add any questions that you have now. We'll be able to go through a few of the questions now in the remaining time, but as there's quite a lot of people here today, as I said, we may not be able to get through everything before we finish the session. Okay, so thank you for your time. General questions and answers will be published online. But if you have more questions which weren't answered today, or you feel free to get in touch with Alessandra or myself. And thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest. We are really excited about this project and the opportunities that can deliver for our workforce, the justice system, and people with lived experience of disability. And thank you for your patience as we work through this new format. We've clearly had a few glitches today, and I'm very sorry we weren't able to get the Auslan interpreters into this part of the session. It's a steep learning curve for all of us, I think. We look forward to receiving your proposals and getting on with the work in the new year, and I'll hand you back to Alessandra now to start the Q&A.
Sorry, the other 20. I was on mute. Sorry. So I'm just going to take a quick pause before we get into the Q&A, because I think we have got our interpreters online now, and just wait for them to be up on the screen. And if someone just can let me know when that has happened, that would be great, and I'll get into the Q&A.
This is Angela, one of the interpreters. I'm already on the screen.
Fantastic, thank you. I can see you now, thank you. Okay, great. All right. So look, I'm not going to work through these questions by theme. I'm going to work through them as they have come in, and I am also going to refer back and forth between Julia and myself. And just a little note to my team, if they could publish the questions so that you can all see them, but in the meantime, I will read them out so that you know what the questions are. So we have a question about the evaluation framework and the program logic that the evaluation is to be based on. That is a very good question. There's a couple of questions in there that go to evaluation and program logic and indicative outcomes. Our position is that the details of the evaluation will obviously need to be very closely linked to the specific details of the proposal. And so we are absolutely expecting that the provider drives and is responsible for the design of that evaluation. However, as the contract holders and the key stakeholders of this project, we will need to be engaged, and we will facilitate consultation and engagement across the department. In terms of the kind of linked question there about ethics approval and support to fast track ethics, the provider is responsible for the ethics approval process. Of course, we will do everything we can to support and facilitate that process, but that responsibility is with the provider who is leading that co-production work. We have a question about the role of local site executive committees. Many of you on the line may be aware that the Department of Justice and Community Safety, together with the Department of Health and Human Services, is rolling out a reform called the Common Clients Reform. That is about creating person-centred, integrated service delivery for people, irrespective of which service system they're in. That reform is supported by integrated governance at a local area level. The local areas will be actively involved in this project, providing feedback, access to workforce and to clients, and bringing together expertise that is immense at those levels about the operation and experience of the NDIS. Questions are coming in thick and fast now. Just give me one moment. There are some questions about easy English documents and graphic design requirements. I think I'll answer those in two ways. In terms of easy English and simple plain language documents, our expectation is that all documents that are produced as part of the training program and part of the engagement program are fit for purpose. They will obviously need to be tailored to their different audiences. We anticipate that the selected provider will have sufficient expertise to know what is appropriate and what is needed. In terms of the graphic design question, I don't really know the answer to that. I think that will be dependent, I guess, about the quality of your proposal, your engagement mechanisms, and the materials you develop. In terms of questions about expectation about the size of the project team, again, that's something that you will need to consider as an organisation. What I can say is, of course, value for money will be a core consideration in the evaluation. Questions about cohorts in terms of workforce cohorts and people with different cohorts of people in the lived experience category. Yes, absolutely. It is really important to us that the work reflects the people who are in contact with this system. And I think it's very well known, the demographics of people who are overrepresented in the justice system. In terms of the workforce and the prioritisation of the workforce effort, as Julia said in her presentation, our primary audience is our frontline workforce. As you know, in the justice sector, that frontline workforce is quite varied, and we will work with the successful provider to facilitate access to that workforce. Julia, in a minute, I might just hand over to you for any that I'm missing. They're coming in so quickly.
I know. It's really rapid fire. I'm just going to try and pick out. There was one about diversity. Look, now I've lost it. I'm sorry.
I'll give you a minute.
Here we go. There's a question about, given there's different groups within the sector, e.g. Indigenous CALD-specific disability, do we need to address all groups or a specific cohort? I think the intention of the proposal is to demonstrate that you're addressing a diversity, a representative diversity of people we see in the justice system. It doesn't have
I think that just picking up on what I had just said in a clearer way, which is that we expect your work to engage with people who are in the system, and that there are specific cohorts who are overrepresented in the system. I'll just respond to the funding bracket question.
Yes.
So I think it's a very good question, and we totally understand why it's being asked. I think when you look at the 3 substantive elements of this project and the size of the justice workforce and our objective for it to be a sustainable project, you can do some thinking, I guess, about what you think. We can't give you the bracket, but you can do some thinking based on that about what the cost of a project like this might be. We do see this as a really fundamental project. We don't see it as a small side project. But having said that, to my earlier point about value for money, we are, of course, as everything in this space is, trying to get as much value as we can for the amount of funding that we have available. And we will be reviewing proposals in very close detail to make sure that we're getting the maximum impact.
Okay, sorry, I just muted briefly because I've got some very noisy magpies in the background. I'm looking at a number of questions around...
We're just going to have an interpreter swap if we can, sorry.
Okay. Oh, hold on. Awesome. I'm just looking at a number of questions around specific numbers, say, for example, specific numbers of staff to be trained, or how many people with lived experience do you want us to engage. We haven't specified that because we're asking you, I suppose we've provided an outline of the problem and some kind of leaning towards some solutions to do with workforce, but we don't fully know, I think, until we engage with people with lived experience to better understand what the solutions would look like. So we haven't defined that, and I think that's really for you as offerers to think about how many people you'd need to engage with and in what way to make it a valid sort of process, if that makes sense. So that's, yeah, it's unspecified. I think there's one about, does the frontline workforce include the police? I think it doesn't exclude the police, but they're probably not the primary target. Would that be a reasonable response to that? Yeah, it's not, it wouldn't exclude the police, but we're thinking more of, I think initially, corrections, youth justice and frontline workforce in the corrections and system. Let me have a look. Yes, all these questions will be documented after the session. There's a question about that, so I can confirm that. We would be supportive. There's a question about co-design processes taking place within correctional facilities, or do you envisage providers working with lived experience only in the community? I would say that we would be looking at all options. We would be looking for people who are currently justice clients, whether that's in a correctional facility or in the community, and also people that are past previous justice clients, And as I said, also families and significant others as well, who also have something to add to that lived experience dynamic. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through.
There's quite a few questions about training and whether the tender is just focusing on the development and design and testing of that training, or whether it will include the rollout of that training. I think given the number of questions on that, we will come back formally to give everybody detail on that question. Yeah. So we'll take that one. Thank you.
I would encourage people to think broadly though as well. I think we recognise that professional development and training as a standalone intervention in terms of practice and workforce development are not particularly effective on their own. So we're looking for proposals that look at a broad suite of responses in terms of developing the workforce.
Question there about support resources that will be made available to support wellbeing. I think I need further information about that question, so please feel free to email that one through. Forensic mental health service users, are they in scope? That is a good question, and we'll come back and clarify that in writing.
Yeah. Okay.
The department will support the recruitment of clients, of course, where we can, but we are looking to the successful provider to drive that process. In terms of the question about, can you talk about what this is embedded in, what other work will be occurring to support cultural change about disability? As referenced in the presentation, this initiative is part of a very significant long-term plan that the Victorian Government has had around building workforce NDIS capability, and it is embedded in that reform. It is, of course, not the only initiative that is occurring. And I think most of that information is publicly available, but of course the successful provider will be provided with any more detailed information necessary about specific activities.
Okay. There's a question about, does this include psychosocial disability? I think we've used the term disability in the request for proposal in the broadest sense. So we're talking about all kinds of disability. So whilst it would include psychosocial disability, it's not exclusively psychosocial disability, given that we know that other hidden disabilities such as acquired brain injury, learning disabilities and other forms of cognitive impairment are significantly under-recognised and represented in the justice system. We would need to see it covering a breadth of disabilities.
I think there's a few questions in there about our objectives and about whether they're achievable or not. Good feedback, thanks to the group. What we would encourage you to do is to outline in your proposals how you propose to meet those objectives and any changes that you think are necessary in delivery, and that can be part of our assessment process. In addition to that, a number more questions coming in around the funding envelope and the scale of the form. These are all very good questions, and I think completely understand why they're being asked. What we would ask you, we know what our objectives are, you know what our ambition is, and we really want your advice on the best way to achieve that, and you should feel authorised to include options around cost and scale in your proposal so that we can consider those. Question about the ongoing engagement of DJCS staff. Yes, we anticipate the DJCS staff will be actively involved in the project at the contract management level, at the strategic level, and in the design.
Okay.
Just going to scroll through the questions
Yep.
to see if there are any other key ones.
There's one about would this include people in treatment settings such as DHHS, Disability Act, Crimes, Mental Impairment Act determined locations? I think we might need to clarify that one in writing.
See that question coming in about the role of the supplier in recruitment of people with lived experience. I feel like I've clarified that one a few times, but it keeps coming in. So just want to make sure that it is clear that we are expecting the provider to drive that process.
And similar to the question, has sufficient time and funding been factored in to genuinely include people with lived experience of intellectual disability in the project, i.e. all documents need to be in easy English and additional time, etc. Again, I think we would take your advice on that. I think this is where we're looking for your expertise as a sector to provide feedback on how you envisage this project and how it would need to be implemented.
In regards to the youth justice and correction guidelines referred to in specifications, yes, if we've referred to guidelines and existing documents in the specifications, then we will provide those documents.
There's a question about, again, how many people to provide capability uplift in terms of how many staff across the 12 months. I would reiterate, we're not looking for throughput or outputs in this, we're looking at outcomes. So we're looking at how you can demonstrate effective outcomes in terms of demonstrating that capability uplift. And that's really the key part to the proposal, rather than the numbers of staff engaged with.
And again, I think I just emphasise that you have the scope within your proposal to give us options of scale and cost to consider.
But again, you do need to remember it is a large workforce. So if you're demonstrating that, you've got to, I suppose, do it with enough people in enough variety of settings to demonstrate how it worked and how effective it is.
Hi, just another quick interpreter change, if that's okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
In terms of, are there any mechanisms that the department can provide where specialist services can link together with consortia proposals? Not during the open tender stage. No, the project does not. In terms of, does the project extend to only people with lived experience who would be eligible for the NDIS? Obviously, the focus of the project is on the NDIS interface. However, we understand that the line between eligible for the NDIS and not eligible for the NDIS is a complex one. And our position is not that eligibility defines your relevance to your experience, the experience and the materials. So no is the short answer, but it is something you need to think about in terms of the usefulness of your advice. Are staff aware of the project?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So this proposal was developed in consultation with parts of the department, including Youth Justice. So there is an awareness of it across the department.
And we will ensure that the required communications go out to direct workforce at the appropriate time. In terms of any questions there about the actual current scale of the justice workforce, they're obviously good questions. I would encourage people to look at what information is available publicly, and we'll confirm in writing what information we can also provide.
Yes, I would reassure people that what we can't answer right now, it's not that it won't be answered, it will just be answered and published on the Buying for Victoria website. So it's, please don't feel like your questions won't be addressed.
There's one question there. The proposal seems to lean towards a solution-focused bias as opposed to the problem space and problem definition bias. Can we speak more to that? I think we might need to know specifically what you mean in order to give you a better answer. A general answer to that would be that the NDIS has been on foot in Victoria for a number of years, and I think between people like yourselves, the sector, and our own experience, we feel that the high-level problem is well understood. Of course, this project in its work will get a better understanding of exactly what the drivers of that problem are, but we are very committed to solutions because we also believe that there are solutions and that the capability and uplift of the workforce is of course possible through this project. But if you want something more specific than that, perhaps send an email through.
Yeah. Did we speak about the LSECs, Alessandra? We did, didn't we?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Right.
There's a question there about waiting for providers who have experience in remote co-design. I think that's part of the evaluation process, so that will need to be provided based on the provider's overall expertise. The evaluation criteria are what are set out in the documentation.
Okay. There's a question about what supports are being provided to the existing workforce to deal with the challenges that will arise when existing workers will have their practices challenged. I would suggest that how you as an offerer are going to approach the workforce development aspects of the proposal is something that you would need to outline in what do you anticipate emerging from that and what would be effective ways of dealing with it.
Question there at 11:55. Will you accept multiple proposals from a provider as a means of demonstrating alternatives? The answer is yes, we will.
Okay.
Give people a few minutes now. I feel like in my review of the questions, I feel like we've covered the majority of substantive questions. So give people a few minutes for anything they don't feel has been covered to pop it into the Q&A.
Okay. Have we come to a natural end?
I think so. We might give it 30 seconds to account for any
that's
delay.
all right. I think there's a couple of things coming in.
Okay, feedback on the word limit. We've complied with the standard requirements around the word limit. If we require additional detail to the detail you put in your proposal, we will of course request it, but please be aware that these are standard word lengths and the word lengths apply consistently to everybody.
Mm.
In terms of the scope of the training, delivery design question, yes, we're going to come back and offer a clarification in writing to that question. Thank you. Yep. I think just in terms of the question about creative solutions and how incremental versus how innovative, I think that what we will want is for a successful provider to understand the workforce and to provide a fit for purpose solution.
Mm.
Okay, question there around access requirements. Will those costs be additional to the funding cap? Happy to have a further discussion about that. The general response to that question, though, is that everybody is dealing with the same clients group and the same workforce group, and in order those things seem fundamental to the delivery of the project, and so our first answer would be that those things need to be delivered within the scope of the funding envelope. However, of course, past the assessment phase, there will be scope for negotiations, but I would, for your proposal, assume that they will have to be covered in your proposal. Got some good feedback there. That's good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Given that we had a sketchy start there.
Yeah, we had a rough start, but maybe a better finish.
All right. Well, looks like that's the end of the questions. Thank you so much to everybody for your patience and your time and your really thoughtful questions. It's extremely exciting for us to feel like there are so many people out there that want to work with us and our workforce on this project, and we are really looking forward to that opportunity. I think it goes without saying, but given the challenges we had, it's also a big thank you to our interpreters for assisting us today. And we really appreciate your patience in getting online. As I said, all this information will be available. We will be providing we were providing a summary of the questions and responses that we provided. The recording will be available. And in addition to that, we've highlighted a few areas where we're going to come back for clarification.